So the Wall Street Journal is reporting on research that found women around the world are more distressed day to day than men, but also more satisfied with their lives in general. So what do we think is behind this paradox?
I think there's a lot of things going on here. So again, because we have nurses here, my research tells me that women live longer than men, but we live more of that life in ill health. And so I don't know if is that verifiable? Yeah, I think so. And I think part of this, to me, is also linked to things like autoimmune disease, where when you look at emotions and how emotions affect our physical health, and we know they do, I think women, as women, we're able to experience more of a range of emotions. I think of motherhood as a perfect example. I've never been simultaneously so joyous and happy and full of wonder, and then terribly depressed and sad, and like my head's in the ditch in one day, right? Like in one day, we can do this.
Yeah.
So I think we experience a lot more range of emotions. I don't know that men are allowed to. I think men are allowed to experience anger and rage. I don't think men are allowed to express sadness the same way. I don't think they're allowed to express vulnerability. So when I think of, are we overall happier? Yeah, because we're allowed to actually be a full human. And men, I don't think we don't let you be fully human most times. And I think that's what we're seeing here. James?
Yes, I mean,
we all look at James.
Yes, good question. I mean, I think a lot of it boils down to resilience. And to my mind, it's a very similar thing to man flu. Like, we know that men and women have colds the same.
Oh, the man flu? I thought you said man flow.
Man flu, yeah, man flu. Sorry, that's something separate. and I think it's just that the women cope with things better. So I think that we're all suffering the same. It's just that women have a resilience, unfortunately, because they've had to handle things a lot better, whereas men, and I speak for myself and every man I know, we are big babies about everything.
There's a man in the audience, James, like, not with you on that.
And maybe not you, he looks very strapping. He looks like he copes with things a lot better than I do. All I know is that when I have a cold, I am in bed, crying, I can't do anything. My wife gets up and gets on with everything. And that's the same for almost every male, female that I know. It's the men don't cope, the women get up and get
But we also cope better because we have a community. We create community.
We talk to each other.
Yeah.
Will you speak to me, sir?
I'm curious, is your husband the same way? Does he...
I mean, I don't know. I think there's so many layers to this conversation. We don't have enough time to unpack all of them. But like, I do think that community is a big part of it. The fact that we are allowed to learn how to communicate, that would explain some of the reasons why women are generally reporting happiness because of our connections, because of our communication, because of our community. But I do think, I think back, I went to see Elizabeth Gilbert, you know, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and she did a lecture in Toronto about a year ago. And she had this really funny part that I couldn't stop thinking about. She had said, I hear so many words that people use to describe women. Things like women are strong, women are emotional, women are capable, women are fierce. But there's one word that I never hear used to describe women. You wanna know what that word is? And I was sitting there listening, going like, what word could it be? She goes, relaxed. It is, right? There is something really important to note about that most women aren't afforded the time to be relaxed. We're too worried about the birthdays and the Botox and the bodybuilding and the, you know, the
packing lunches.
Packing lunches and the lump in our breast that we have to get checked out, among all these other things. So we're bearing and wearing the weight of all of these things. So I think that explains some of the, I don't know.
Unhappiness?
Unhappiness.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna use my parents as a point of reference for this conversation because growing up, my mom, whatever emotion she was having, we all heard about it. And that's not a negative thing. If she was tired, we heard about it. If she was angry, we heard about it. But my dad, on the other hand, just carried on and didn't talk a lot about any of his emotions. So a few years ago, I've talked about it before, my dad was in the hospital for 6 months. And it was the worst time, but it also, I look back on it and it was a gift. Because it was the first time that my dad and I, because we had all this time in the hospital, to actually talk. And because he was so vulnerable, he was in a very vulnerable state, he opened up in a way that we have never spoken before in my entire life. And he talked about things like his mom's death and how that affected him and how that trailed him through his entire life, and never talked to anybody about that. And we created this I wanted to create a safe space for my dad to continue to talk, and it was this wonderful moment that I'm so grateful for. And now our relationship, it's almost like I have a new dad, a different dad, which is wonderful. I'm not gonna cry. And now he just is dropping truth bombs on me all the time. We'll be driving, and he's like, yeah, remember that? There's a girl that I dated, and my dad dated his sister, and I'm like, whoa, what's happening?
The floodgates are open.
It's open, but I'm so grateful for it because I realized with his Caribbean background and the time that he grew up, there was none of that. No one was ever asking.
Can you
how he
imagine the
felt
life
about
he would
things.
have had if he could have been so open his whole life?
We talk about that all the time, but you
Yeah.
know what? I'm grateful for the time we have. So it's just wonderful. But I think a lot of men, that's where the unhappiness comes from. You're not allowed to actually talk about your feelings.
Open
You don't
up,
feel
men.
safe.
Open up.
Tell us.
Hey there, what did you think? Drop your comments below and join the conversation. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can find more on everything from food and fashion to pop culture and current events. See you soon.